Welcome back to the Download Show. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Yong Kim, a true global leader in finance, technology, and innovation. Over nearly 3 decades, he's led high-stakes investment strategies across Asia, the US, and Europe, from directing global equities at Credit Suisse to advising cutting-edge fintech and blockchain startups. Now, as advisor to various venture capital firms that operate between Silicon Valley and Korea, Yong sits at the crossroads of international trade, digital finance, and strategic growth. In this conversation, we'll dive into his unique perspective on South Korea's new president, the rapid rise of the Korean defense and semiconductor industries, and the country's broader economic future within Asia. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or simply curious about where Korea is headed on the world stage, this episode is for you. Welcome to the show, Yong.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me.
Now, I wanted to dig very quickly into the most pertinent subject, the new president, Lee Jae-Myung. So we're about halfway towards his honeymoon phase. What is the current perception in Korea with the new president?
Yeah, the current domestic perception is, again, as you mentioned aptly, he's still in his honeymoon phase. So a lot of the voters are giving him the benefit of the doubt. Um, he's just about halfway through uh, naming his cabinet ministerial positions. And actually, some of the appointments, such as the new Minister of Health, uh, who happened to be the former head of the Korean effort for COVID-19, a very successful effort, So, um, and also the new Minister for the Small and Medium Enterprises, they appointed a person who has a uh, extensive background in the startup and venture capital space. So, yeah, so far so good. A lot of people are giving the new president Lee Jae-myung the benefit of a doubt, and he's aware that everybody's watching him, and they'll see if once his cabinet is fully appointed, then he'll move on quickly to keep some of his campaign promises, such as you know employment and labor flexibility, making housing affordable, and yeah, and uh, reducing government regulations to allow more innovation-led growth in the Korean economy overall. So that's the domestic side, and I think overseas, I think the angle is, obviously, Korea trade-wise and militarily is between the United States and China. So I guess people are waiting to see, how he will conduct a balancing act.
What are generally his kind of policy stances, or at least kind of posture towards China, like you
Hmm.
mentioned, and actually also Japan, right? So, two great neighbors that exercise a great deal of influence in this Asian sphere.
Yeah. Well, he describes himself uh, you know, in interviews as a pragmatist. So we'll see if he will leave alone the appeasement, the friendship, uh, rebuilding relations with Japan. Because as historically, Korea had a love-hate relationship with Japan for a variety of historical reasons. Uh, but more importantly, obviously, all eyes are on um, his stance with China, because China is the biggest export market for Korea. 20% of Korea's exports go to China. And also in terms of supply in the chain economics, again, China plays an incredibly important role in the supply chain ecosystem in the Asia Pacific, including Korea. So this has to be managed very, very carefully. And so far, the new president hasn't made any announcements or statements regarding his future plans for how to conducting relations with China. I think he is absorbing the current climate, paying a lot of attention to what's going on between Washington, D.C. and Beijing. And he will probably position himself in a way that does not create too much political tension, but also at the same time doesn't jeopardize uh, what is really more important for Korea, which is the no, not to jeopardize the export angle.
Now let's talk about one of actually those critical supply chains, right? So, and kind of points for tension. Um, Korea is a critical part of the semiconductor supply chain and trade. SK Hynix is kind of offers a critical component for NVIDIA high-end chips. How do you think about kind of Korea's role in the semiconductor trade, and where does it play? I think between the U.S. and China.
Yes, uh, you're absolutely right to zero in on that aspect uh, of the trade equation between Korea, China, and the United States. At the heart of all this are semiconductors, particularly, as you just mentioned. Korea overall is a world leader in memory chips. And within the memory chip category, one of the Korean companies, uh, SK Hynix, uh, produces and exports special type of memory chip called high bandwidth memory, or HBM memory chip. And what's so special about this? It turns out that this is a critical component for NVIDIA's AI GPUs. Um, so and again, by extension, what the implication is that uh, the world, as you know, at the moment, is in a race for AI dominance, and at the moment, the dominant hardware provider, of course, is NVIDIA. NVIDIA GPUs fire up all the AI cutting edge efforts around the world. So having access to NVIDIA products is absolutely critical if you have any type of AI ambition. And so, and of course, the US and China are also in a, you know, AI race between each other. So why this is sensitive for Korea is that Korea is in the middle. We sell both to the U.S. as well as China, but politically, and as you know, militarily, uh, we are in the American sphere of influence. So it is conceivable that Washington D.C., if they have any issue or they would like to raise an issue with China, they could apply pressure to Korea and say, "Oh, um, moderate your export of specialty chips that go into AI GPUs," and uh, so indirectly affecting China's ability to access the hardware they need for AI research. So that's the subtlety.
And that seems to be quite a tightrope to play, and I'm sure the president actually knows. This is one of his trump cards, so to speak, that he has. Um, Switching a little bit as well, you were kind of insinuating, I think, about the American sphere of influence. I mean, I was in the U.S. military assigned to Second ID in Korea up in Uijeongbu, so I know very well the American military and its might and its presence historically in Korea. However, From what I heard and from what you actually were telling me and educating me on last time we spoke, Korea's defense industry is also ramping up and growing. I think the audience would love to learn a little bit more about Korea's efforts in defense.
Yes, I think that's another major second development that you have focused on, and you're right. I think a lot of people recently are surprised that Korea is now one of the top 10 producers and exporters of military equipment in the world. And this comes as a big surprise to a lot of people. For instance, when Poland donated uh, almost the majority of their tanks to Ukraine, uh, they replenished them by ordering uh, Korean made uh, K1 Black Panther tanks in the hundreds. And the reason they gave is that they, again, they've also have placed orders for M1 Abrams tanks from the United States. But they stated that the delivery of A1 Abrams tanks takes somewhere between 1 and 2 years, whereas the Korean tanks started to arrive in Poland within 6 months. You also Poland is also buying a significant number of uh, you know you and I know what a howitzer is, and a self-propelled 105 cannons, right? And Poland is also buying those from Korea also. And recently, uh, Korea has exported about 1,700 units of those howitzers, overseas. Um, and the other point that which surprises people to no end is that Korea actually exports jet fighters. Uh, we currently have something called a KF-21, which is, if you were to look at it, um, uh, it looks reminiscent of the U.S. Air Force F-22 Raptor. So you could call it not a full stealth fighter like the F-35, but you know, a half generation, behind semi-stealth fighter. And Korea is exporting these to countries in the Middle East, to Indonesia. We also have these things called KF-50, which are jet trainers, which are also being sold across Asia, Asia Pacific. So um, all of a sudden, uh, there's more to Korean exports than K-pop.
Now, you mentioned, I think, the delivery and the execution is much faster than the U.S. and the U.S. has had problems. I mean, you could take a look at, I believe, in Australia as well. The submarine delivery has been delayed as well.
Hmm.
But is there more to it? I think you insinuated before as well that it's the Korean defense kind of the weapon systems and the interoperability with the U.S. systems,
That's
which
correct.
makes it a very interesting kind of maybe not replacement, but
Hmm.
that's the advantage.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are actually two additional features in addition to the fast delivery times and the good prices that attract buyers. The other point is that, as you mentioned, all Korean weapon exports are NATO compatible, interoperable. You can, especially ammo, and a lot of the manuals and protocols are all completely NATO interoperable. And the other point, which is also quite interesting, is that uh, Korea, for instance, in the case of Poland, has offered to uh, transfer some of the technology for making these weapons. So, uh, for instance, in the uh, tank deal with Poland, after an initial number of tanks that will be exported from Korea, Another number will be assembled in Poland. So this kind of technology transfer offer makes the entire package quite attractive to many of these
Right.
countries.
Right. So because it does stimulate, I guess, to some degree, the local and sovereign kind of capabilities, defense capabilities.
Yes, um, and uh, and as you know, I think that's a very attractive to many of these countries, which historically have to depend completely on other countries.
Mm. The big elephant in the room. So I guess to some degree, I guess what's I would think that the Korea defense kind of industry thinks that Europe is really a growth sector for or a growth area for them
Yes,
as a replacement to the U.S. system.
yes, but of course, uh, if you were a political scientist, you would wonder, oh, is this indirect or a soft alignment with NATO?
And then how and then on the this is something I think the most audience members will not know, right? So this is a great topic to discuss. And on the defense side, how long has this kind of industry been around, and who are the major players in Korea?
Hmm. Well, actually, the defense industry has been around for decades, but um, most of the time, it was purely for domestic consumption to equip our own domestic military, because obviously, as you know, we have a certain situation with North Korea. So we have our own backyard defense commitments, and and as you know, Korea has the breadth and the depth of industry to be able to produce many of the spare parts or the replacements or even develop new equipment, right? So, and that's what they did. Um, but I suppose the export began actually quite recently. It's probably I would say maximum a decade in the making. But the actual industry has a much longer history, and the leaders are names you already know. Hyundai, Hanwha, uh, and the fighters are made by a consortium of Korean top conglomerates. This consortium is called, you know, Korea Aerospace Industries (KAI).
See, I see. And were these kind of set up independently and domestically as well, or were there kind of relations with the U.S. defense contractors, the BAEs, the
Initially,
Lockheeds?
uh, like many countries, initially these were set up as sort of service units with licenses from American or European Western defense companies. Um, so, but over time, uh, they developed enough expertise and they received enough investment to begin to develop their own, weapons hardware.
Super interesting. Thank you very much for your time, Yong.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.